I have always loved the idea of magic. Growing up, my favorite movies were Harry Potter and The Neverending Story. But I loved pretty much anything that had an abnormal, fantastical feel with a little twist of magic sprinkled in. But I never expected to experience anything truly magical in real life. In 2014, I was living with my boyfriend and his sister in a beautiful apartment complex. It was called Fountains in the Green. As you can imagine, it was full of plants, trees, flowers, and my absolute favorite, fountains. I loved it. Aesthetics are important to me, and I was constantly tidying this place and keeping it clean so that the environment inside the apartment matched the beauty outside. I'm also a fussy person generally, and I'm just a lot happier when everything's in its proper place. Not long after we moved in, I started having these feelings that I was being watched. It tended to happen more when I was alone, which happened a lot. My boyfriend and his sister had a different work schedule than I did, so I was often at home when they weren't, and vice versa. I shrugged off this feeling as just my imagination, but then over time, things got more intense. Now, it wasn't just a feeling anymore. I started to see things out of the corner of my eye, like a small flash or just a blur, as if something had streaked past me. It's hard to explain. Anyway, the longer I lived there, the more frequent these experiences became. Then I started to hear things, the sounds of dishes clinking in the other room, or loud thuds in rooms I knew were empty. I would always go and check on what was making these sounds, but I wouldn't find anything. I do have a Jack Russell slash teacup chihuahua that is very vocal, but he was normally with me when these sounds occurred, so it couldn't have been him. So I started to suspect something supernatural was going on. I've had a few supernatural experiences in the past, so I was open to the possibility. So one day, my boyfriend's sister had a friend over. I was chatting with them both and mentioned some of the strange incidents that had been going on in the apartment. I said I thought it might be supernatural. Well, it turns out this friend was basically a psychic, and she got very interested and started asking me a bunch of questions like, does this entity seem mischievous? Does it make you feel unsafe or like it's trying to get your attention? Are you a clean person, etc.? I admitted whatever was happening in the apartment felt mischievous rather than malevolent, and that I am indeed a neat freak. I also said I didn't feel particularly unsafe, just concerned because I didn't know what it was and it made me nervous. She grinned and kind of laughed and said she thought I had a fairy on my hands. She explained that they enjoy very green places and clean areas and said that one might have taken a liking to me. Once she said this, I got very excited. As I said, I've always loved the idea of magic, and the thought that something straight out of a fantasy movie could be happening to me in my home kind of made me happy, to be honest. And it was certainly preferable to having a ghost or a demon or something haunting the place. So I asked a friend for advice on how to handle the situation. She told me I should leave small offerings out for the fairy, like cinnamon sticks, milk, or sweet treats. And so I did exactly this. And I would also say out loud, I'm leaving these here for you, just to make sure the fairy knew these were meant for him or her. Then one night, when my boyfriend was working his night shift and his sister was out with friends, I was lying in bed with my dog, just about to doze off. That's when I heard what sounded like the fastest, tiniest footsteps take off from the top of the ceiling and then run down the wall, right past my bed, down towards the floor. As this happened, I felt something graze the side of my face, And I kid you not, I also heard the flutter of wings flapping as fast as these feet were running. If I had been lying in a different position, I'm sure the fairy would have run right over my cheek. I could feel wings brush past. It was so close, and the wind from it blew my hair. Immediately after this happened, my dog leapt to his feet, jumped over me to the ground, and chased something around the bed, then down the hallway and into the living room. He was barking at it wildly. I called for him to come back. It was pitch black, and I was startled by what had happened. I could have peed myself, honestly. Even though I was pretty sure I knew what it was, the fact that it was real and happening, and that I had felt it in such a physical way, was still frightening and difficult to process. But after gaining some distance from the experience, thinking back, I'm grateful it happened. Really, it was the best experience of my life. Knowing magic is real and a fairy actually flew by my face, what could be better? I just hope I get to see one day. It's been a while since the experience, but I like sharing the story, especially to kids who have no problem believing magic is real, unlike adults. Whenever I tell my 7-year-old this story, he always asks me to repeat it again and again. And I know that no matter what, I will forever treasure that moment. It's one of my favorite memories. It makes me laugh when I think about it. Some fairies really do enjoy making an entrance. I woke up one morning to a sense of presence in my bedroom. The room was filled with a pink glow that I believed had to do with the dewy pink flowers that had just bloomed in a tree outside my window. Then I saw a small, maybe 8-inch high being with its back to me, skittering back and forth on the windowsill. It seemed to be inspecting the tree. It had a simian look about it, stood rather stooped, with arms dangling, and long wings that appeared to be moving as though triggered by the being's respiration. It had a cap and clothing that looked like dried leaves, and the coloring of the wings looked the same. The skin was like parchment in both color and depth, and I could see light through the skin. It did not seem transparent as much as just very thin-skinned. It made sense that this was a sort of camouflage that could keep it from being detected. It had such an intense presence that it was uncomfortable, and I lay very still for fear of attracting its attention. Eventually, after several minutes, it flew away, but did not seem to actually need its wings to do so. I developed a fair obsession with fairies after that and observed a very similar being among the illustrations of Brian Froud. I've had clairvoyant experiences in the past, well, ever since childhood. I feel pretty confident that I can tell the difference between a being like this and a ghost. It seemed like such a creature of nature and so invested in inspecting the tree that it just seemed like a fairy. I view the fairies as intelligences that are invested in developing and protecting the natural world. I was stationed at Hanscom Air Force Base from 2012 to 2015. During my time there, I had an unusual experience. I was leaving my work building as the sun was setting. I had my headphones on and was listening to music loudly through my phone when I began to hear a loud fluttering, like a hummingbird. It was so loud I could hear it over my music. I immediately looked up and saw a large yellow ball of light. Inside the ball of light was a humanoid figure. It was maybe a few inches tall and extremely slender. It appeared as a shadow, like I could see its dark shape inside the light. I said, "What the hell is that?" Quite loudly, I might add. And it noticed me instantly. And then it gasped. I heard it gasp. And it darted off towards this tiny wooded park, which was at the center of the base. It left a trail of sparkly yellow light on the air as it flew, and zoomed directly into this giant old oak tree which was in the wooded park. And it disappeared with a kind of puff. I was stunned. I had never seen anything like this before or since. The closest creature that I can say with confidence that it resembled is a Tinkerbell-like fairy. People think I'm nuts when I tell them this, but I don't care. I know exactly what I saw. I was 12 years old when this happened, sleeping in bed in my room at night. The clock chimed midnight and woke me up. My bed faced the bedroom door, which was open. There was a wardrobe straight ahead against the wall. The bathroom door was on the right. The exit to the hall was on the left. A floor lamp was on to the left. The light was subdued but lit. I started thinking about school or something while staring straight ahead. That's when I heard this loud metallic ping, like a triangle being struck. A ball of light appeared from the bathroom door and started to move horizontal and evenly towards me. Inside was a female form, naked with beautiful wings, which were a white, ivory, or pearl color and had butterfly markings on them. She had a very pretty face. Her eyes were silver or gray, and she had long hair and pointed ears. She was not solid, but appeared to be made entirely of tiny, tiny stars, which were effervescent. As the stars shifted with this effervescent effect, I could see right through her. I pinched myself because I thought I was dreaming, but she didn't go away. She was still there. I didn't know what to do, but my 12-year-old mind said, when you see something magical, make a wish. So that's what I did. I made a wish not to be bullied at school anymore. And then I felt guilty because my wish was so selfish, and I made another wish for world peace. Then the being turned and looked directly at me. I was scared. I said out loud, "I don't believe in fairies." And the ball of light popped like a bubble, and she disappeared. I felt awful after that. I hope I didn't hurt her. I think fairies are from another dimension and that they look after nature. I think they can be mischievous at times. Since my experience as a child, I've wanted to see a fairy again. There have been times when I've thought I've seen fairies during meditations, though they were not nearly as beautiful as the one I saw when I was 12. That was also the only time I ever saw one physically in front of me. She was so, so beautiful and made of tiny, moving stars. One summer, I got a job picking cherries at a local farm. It was my second day on the job, and there I was picking cherries when I noticed a lot of moss and mushrooms around me and very small flowers. And I thought to myself the area looked very much like fairyland. Very soon after I had had this thought, a tiny 1 inch light greenish goldish insect hovered right in front of my face. As I gazed closer at it, I realized it was not an insect. It was some kind of fairy creature, a beautiful female humanoid figure with pale blonde hair and a mermaid like bottom half that sort of curled up like a seahorse. She had four golden iridescent wings like a butterfly. This thing was hovering on the air right in front of me, as if it wanted to communicate with me or something. She was making sounds that I did not understand or couldn't hear. I thought I should take a picture of her with my cell phone, and when I pulled it out of my pocket and was about to snap the shot, she seemed to get very angry and flew away. After this happened, a dark green, sort of black insect like creature, about the same size, kept flying in my face, dive bombing me. It scratched my neck and it seemed to be angry. I continued my job working and apologized out loud to the fairy for trying to take a picture. As I got into my car at the end of the day, another greenish black insect like creature attacked me, flew into my face, and scratched my forehead. So I don't think I was forgiven. I think the creature I saw was a fairy because she looked like a fairy type creature, and the type that I've seen in books, though not exactly because she had a fishtail, sort of like a mermaid, which I don't think is usual for flying fairies with wings. I have never had another experience like that since. But one thing is for certain, if I ever do see another fairy, I am leaving my cell phone in my pocket. This happened in Scotland, in a supermarket of all places. I was standing at the checkouts waiting for the wife to pick up a last minute item. I was pretty zoned out when this big moth came straight at me. It felt like it was going to hit me in the face, and I went to swat it out of the way. That's when I realized that it wasn't a moth, but some kind of little man, dressed in a red jacket and green trousers. I don't know who was more shocked, me or him. I thought I had connected with my SWAT and immediately began searching around, but could find neither moth nor fairy anywhere nearby on the floor area. I was quite disturbed afterwards to think that I may have killed a fairy. It happened so fast, but I remember it clearly. It was just like a little man wearing a red jacket and green trousers. The wings were much more substantial than I would have expected, more organic than the run of the mill ethereal type wings usually depicted in illustrations. I think it was a fairy because of its size mainly, and it just never occurred to me that it could be anything else. I think fairies are elemental, other dimensional entities, but I have no idea if I'm being totally honest. Even still, something fundamental changed in me that day. It's been over 10 years, but I'm still trying to come to terms with the what and the why of the experience. I saw what I saw, and I can't deny it. This is a weird world we live in, weirder than we like to admit. My grandmother died tragically when my mother was only 4 years old. As an adult, my mother was looking through a collection of things that had belonged to my grandmother, and she found a journal, a diary amongst those things. My mother was excited by the find. Being only 4 years old when her mother had died, she never really had a chance to get to know her. Reading through the diary, my mother was surprised to discover that here and there, throughout the course of several years, my grandmother had moments of mentioning encounters with fairies. My grandmother lived in Connecticut at this time, but was originally from Rhode Island. She was second generation American from Scottish English descent. Anyway, according to her diaries, she quite regularly experienced seeing fairy folk in her garden and near along the edge of the woods, close to where she lived. She simply observed them fluttering about and what seemed like tending to their own business. She described them as small, human-like, with wings like insects. She didn't want to interact with them for fear of frightening them, and would just observe them much as you would observe a wild animal. She described these encounters in a very matter-of-fact way, as if these creatures were just going about their business like any other wild thing. The fact that my grandmother mentioned these encounters so casually in her diaries, diaries I doubt she ever thought anyone else would read, somehow makes the truth of what she said more convincing to me. It's also interesting to me that she considered these encounters as just a normal part of life. It makes me wonder if older generations, people who live their lives closer to nature, knew more about fairies and other nature spirits than we know now. There are wonderful conveniences in the modern world, but sometimes I think we have lost some other forms of knowledge. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you thought of these stories in the comments. I'll be there joining the discussion today, answering questions and reacting to comments and suggestions for future content. The stories in the video came courtesy of subscribers and the Fairy Investigation Society. Thanks to everyone who submitted. These stories were edited to make them more friendly for narration, but if you want to read the original Fairy Census stories, you can find the link to the Fairy Investigation Society in the description. I'm always collecting your true fairy encounter stories, so if you've got one, I'd love to read it. You can send me your story by submitting it on my website at scaryfairygodmother.com. It has a spot where you can submit your stories, comments, questions, or suggestions. You can also sign up for my mailing list there. It's free to sign up. If you have fairy art to share, please email it to me with fairy art in the subject line and your social media links, and I'll share those out on my social media channels. As always, special thanks to all my supporters and subscribers. You guys on Patreon, I want to send a special shout out to you. Anyone who joined the channel or made a one-time donation through PayPal, Coffee, or the thanks button, which is now located below this video. I just really appreciate you guys so much and the support you are giving this work. Really, this work would not be happening without you. If you like this content, would like to support it, please check out my Patreon page and the other support options in the description below. Don't forget to leave a comment, like, share, and subscribe if you're new. That's also a great way to help the channel if you can't afford to support me financially. And be sure to hit the bell to receive notifications of new videos. And until next time, this has been a visit from your scary fairy godmother.